Good evening and welcome back to Sports Talk ATL. I am Chase Earl, joined by Alex Lord. A couple days into training camp, and it's hard not to buy into the Atlanta Falcons offense and Michael Penix. And yes, we both acknowledge that there are things to work on, but we have seen the upside. And as you enter year two, where you're the first time, it's going to be him being the full-time starter, getting all those reps with the starting wide receivers, the starting core, as well as Zach Robinson. When you think about that, and you think about the bones of this offense, having four starters returning, I know you lost Drew Dahlman, but Ryan Newsel, they obviously feel very confident in. Bijan Robinson entering year three, and he exploded last year, but it feels like he could go even more nuclear this year. I don't know if you heard Saquon Barkley talk about him on the top 100, but he was like, he's next. He's the next great one. He is. Tyrann Mathieu is like, oh, that boy is tough. So that guy, I think he has another level. Like he has a 2,000-yard like rushing season in him. If the Falcons offense flowing, we talked about Kyle Pitts kind of taking that next step. Drake London, we think could be a star. Darnell Mooney is a great number two. Like there's nothing in this offense that should leave you thinking that it can't be great if Michael Penix is any good.
I mean, they were pretty damn good last year. Better than I even thought. You know, I went and did something on it. Now it's hard not to get excited about Michael Penix. And I'm trying to be cautiously optimistic, but I kind of joked, you know, the first highlight video I'm in. And then you hear him at the podium and he says all the right things. And I know some people go, oh, that's just coach speak. That's just quarterback speak. That's what he's. I don't care. After dealing with Mayo, Kirk Cousins, it feels good to have a little bit of swagger at the quarterback position. And I'm in, and I'm buying in. And even last year, top half of the league in pretty much every major offensive category outside of a couple, which are all things that are fixable. And that's what we'll talk about later, maybe with Z-Rob, what to expect with Zach Robinson in year two, that all of the Falcons offense, they had no issue getting into the red zone or, you know, between the 20 and 20, it was everything to do with in the short part of the field, in that red part of the field, the important part, self-inflicted penalties, Kirk Cousins turnovers issues. You're like, Kirk Cousins threw one touchdown in 5 games while throwing 9 interceptions, and the Falcons offense finished in the top half of pretty much total offense, rush yards, points, and a couple of others. So it's hard not to get excited because you mentioned it, and the bones of the offense are still in place. In fact, you know, 4.5 starters. You know, Newsel started half the games last year, and then you talk about Penix, and his arm unlocks a completely different facet of this offense that Kirk Cousins couldn't dream of kind of, you know, executing. So it's hard not to get excited. I got to talk myself down a little bit.
Yeah, and then Raheem Morris said, you know, what can Michael Penix improve on from that 3-game sample size? And it was he's got to hit his layups. And it really is that simple because we saw him do the Hercules stuff at the end of games. And then I think I think the biggest reason we're all so excited is because he started doing that in that week 3 game against the Panthers. And yes, it's the Panthers, a terrible defensive team. But it's hard to play the quarterback position that well against any NFL defense, any defense. It doesn't really matter who you're playing when you do it that well. But we've seen the all-star plays and the big arm and stuff like that where you're just like, yeah, you can't teach that. There's absolutely nothing. He made a ton of those in a 3-week. I mean, I don't know what the numbers are from Pro Football Focus, but I guarantee you go look at big-time throws over the last 3 weeks. He was at the top of the list because he was making throws that only the best quarterbacks in the league can make. So taking that next step is the easier stuff. It's just hit your layups, process better, take the 10-yard catch, take the dump off, make sure you hit your intermediate routes, stuff like it's the easy stuff, but it's also the stuff that makes the great ones great because they never miss those. I mean, Drew Brees, yeah, he would throw it deep every once in a while when he had some weapons, but for the most part, it was like, I know where this is going. You're not going to be, I'm going to get, and when you have all these playmakers, you don't have to go deep every time. Like get the ball in Drake London and Bijan Robinson and Darnell Mooney's hands, and you're going to be all right more often than not.
Yeah, I think that's where Michael Penix, you know, one thing that was really impressive is like Michael Penix he made mistakes and he will continue to make mistakes up until, you know, he retires. That's just the name of the game. But what I think was super encouraging from, you know, that aspect, the mental side of the game is like he rarely made the same mistake unless it was physical, you know, talking about, you know, some consistency issues with the accuracy. He didn't make a lot of mental mistakes twice. He made it once and learned from it. And to be able to learn on the fly like that, 3 games, it is overly impressive. And I think, I think it's on the Falcons coaching staff to, maybe not coddle him, push him, push the limits. There's quotes out there going, he's telling Z-Rob, let it fly, call it. I'll run it. Don't matter. I think, you can't teach that level of confidence and that level of, cool. And I don't mean like cool guy. I just mean like he's fine in whatever situation you put him in. And
he certainly has an aura about him of just being super cool. And I'm not talking about like cool on a swagger thing. Even though he does have some of that,
calm,
and he will bring. It seems like when he's out there, he's just like
composed.
It's like he knows how to talk to the media. He knows what to say. And it just everything. He's cool, calm, and collected. And I think that's where I know he doesn't seem like the loudest voice in the room, but this guy was a captain at Washington. This guy is a natural leader. It's just a little bit type of leadership. There was one thing about Kyle Pitts we didn't discuss, and Kyle Pitts talked about the rat poison that is the negative press, which it's funny because rat poison is actually something that has been phrased by Kirby Smart, originally Nick Saban, but you hear it from Kirby Smart and you hear it from Lane Kiffin, disciples of the opposite of when you're giving too much praise. So it's interesting that Kyle Pitts is using it as, and listen,
well, that's Florida for you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's why Florida hasn't had much success, right, Pitts? The negative stuff, this stuff.
Read more of it.
Yeah, that should be this. I mean, we all remember Nolan Smith saying they predict us to go 7-5.
And he believed that too.
Yeah, like everybody had believed that, and so Kyle Pitts is getting as much what I would call positive rat poison. He should be relishing in it, and like I'm going to prove you wrong. But it was interesting to hear him use that term literally in the polar opposite way that we hear from these SEC coaches that kind of made that famous.
Yeah, hate it. It's the opposite of what they're talking about, bulletin board material, and everybody is giving you bulletin board material. And, obviously he does his own thing. Everybody has their own ticker. What makes them special? Tom Brady could fabricate some motivation out of thin air, just make up something, and then that just drives him for months, weeks, a play, a drive, it doesn't matter. And maybe this is Kyle Pitts' way of kind of shutting it out. Maybe he wants to be calm and zen, whatever it might be. I don't give a damn. You better just be able to play.
I think for the most part, shutting the media out of any conversation is probably a good thing because, yes, you can't go in here listening to all the negative when you're actually playing bad. Now, if you're Nolan Smith and you're 2022 Georgia and you just came off a national champion, you can find bulletin board material on anything because it's hard to find. Like, you can go searching this. I want one person to say I suck so I can go out there and dominate. But when it's quite literally everything Kyle Pitts has heard, and understandably so, But even
not me.
I
got you, my guy.
Even the optimists have their faults with Kyle Pitts, and they should. They should. He hasn't lived up to the billing. So I understand what he's saying in terms of it. I just think it's funny because it's the opposite of how he.
Here's a question: there feels like a lot of nice guys, and obviously we don't see the behind the scenes. We don't see, and the NFL is different than college in that aspect, where you can't get in a guy's butt because he is a grown man, and obviously. You got to teach, just like a teacher. They have to teach students different ways because everybody has a different way of learning. Motivation is the same exact thing. Is there maybe a too friendly of an environment in Flowery Branch where Raheem Morris is like, come on, buddy?
I think we've been saying that for years. When you
maybe Pitts does need somebody to be like, hey, you have not been good enough whatsoever.
I think the top-down environment that we get shown, and like we see it with Terry Fontenot.
Yeah, I mean, it's from Arthur Blank all the way down.
I definitely think there's always been too much of a family atmosphere. But I do think, especially when you bring in a guy like Jeff Ulbrich, and I know he's not working directly with that, but that guy's got a little something to him.
Well, he's the quintessential DC, and Z-Rob is the quintessential OC.
And Ollie that they brought in. Those guys.
Savages.
Those guys, they're going to be getting into everyone. And offensive guys, defensive guys. So I think there's plenty of that to go around. Dwayne Ledford. I mean, there's plenty of that to go around that we don't see. I don't think they have a problem. I mean, even Raheem Morris, I guarantee you, behind the scenes, he smiles up there, but he is a snake oil salesman. I mean, that's
a silent killer.
Yeah, that he's a defensive guy through and through. I know he's worked on both sides of the ball, but I guarantee you, he's getting in people's butts too when it needed to. So I'm not worried in terms of that. As far as leadership, I mean, when one of your best players is Chris Lundstrom, and that guy's as nasty as can be on the football field, I'm sure there's plenty of that as well defensively. I'd like to see a guy that I know that if he became kind of a starter this year, Billy Bowman starts to make impact. I guarantee you he's bringing some energies. Jalen Walker, that guy, maybe not so much James Pierce Jr., but Jalen Walker, he is an absolute savage. So I'm not too worried about like the nice guy thing or anything like that. And Bijan Robinson lets his play do the talking. I ain't got no problem with that.
Yeah, Drake London's a silent killer too.
Yeah.
Talking about
savage.
He doesn't talk the talk. He walks the walk. And, maybe you'd rather have that from a wide receiver. You don't see it very often. It's usually talking the talk and not walking the walk from that position.
We got some Braves. So we're going to go around the horn coming up after the break. We talked a little bit about it yesterday as far as where the Braves have needs, what could they possibly, but let's break it down. Let's go through it. We'll do it this segment and the next segment. We'll do pitchers next segment. We will go with the position players and we're going to go around the horn at where you think you have problems, where you think you have to consider making moves, where you think you definitely have to make moves. And we'll start right there at third base. Austin Riley. I think the obvious answer is nothing.
Trade.
Yeah. The obvious answer there is nothing. Then you go to shortstop, Nick Allen. Now, Nick Allen's interesting.
Guy's a positive WAR player.
I don't think
he's unbelievable.
Listen. I don't think it's a slam dunk where it's like you have to go out there and replace Nick Allen. Am I obviously looking to replace Nick Allen? There's no question about it. But we've seen this song and dance before with the Atlanta Braves when it comes to the shortstop position. Now, I do think they need to go out there and spend money in some form or fashion. But if the thing was, hey, go find a really good shortstop, but hey, second base, we're going to have to leave open. We're going to have to just roll with Jerks and Profar and Michael Harris out there in the outfield, and that hurts our starting pitcher. We might have to allocate our resources more evenly, and if that means keeping Nick Allen, that's not the worst case scenario to me. I think you can deal with him at the end of that lineup because he's so good defensively, but that means you have to aggressively approach the other holes.
Yeah, that's perfect. I have no problem bringing back Nick Allen. Zero problem, because the only, and it's not just an obvious upgrade where it's like, a lot of people are better than Nick Allen offensively, and you could probably find one on the street for not that much money. But how much money could you spend elsewhere and improve that position, that much more? Because the goal is to make the entire offense better. However you get from A to B doesn't matter to me. I don't care who's in the lineup or where you're spending the money or, exactly what you're saying, the famous athletics thing in the aggregate. The only thing we should be concerned about is how to improve the overall offense. And I agree. I think there's an easier way to improve it in a much cheaper fashion than shortstop.
Second base, Ozzie Albies. To me, if I'm going out there and I'm a gambling man, I think they do have to upgrade either second base or shortstop because there are only so many places where you can improve this offense, and obviously it needs to be improved a lot. Now, there is the scenario where Ozzie Albies finds his footing over the second half of the year and you feel more comfortable. But right now, you've got to replace one of those areas. And it could be either or. Pick one. To me, I think second base is easier. A lot more people can play second base. You can definitely find a better slugger that can play second base than you can shortstop. And I think Nick Allen's so good defensively at shortstop that he helps out your pitching staff that I'd probably, and this is crazy to say, I'm literally saying it, I'd probably at this point rather ride with Nick Allen at shortstop and replace Ozzie Albies than vice versa.
If the season ended today, I don't know how anybody could, logically suggest otherwise. I mean, Ozzie's been horrible. And he's been much better slightly before the All-Star break and since the All-Star break. And maybe, we do see that. I think for me, and I think for Braves fans and even Anthopoulos, this is, a decision that's going to bleed into the end of the season where it's like, do you have any more power? Because I think that's the deciding thing for me, is that's what made Ozzie Albies so desirable at second base was his uncanny ability to hit home runs, specifically righties, which is just gone. I mean, he cannot. I mean, that was, he had an OPS near 900 against righties, and it's just gone. And if you see that creep back up to his career norm, maybe you think it was the injury from the wrist injury and surgery and yada, 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 and a year removed improves that facet. But I think I said it earlier that you have got find a starting middle infielder this offseason. And, maybe somebody who can start at shortstop. And like you just said, Ozzie Albies keeps not hitting. His defense is nothing to keep him in the lineup for. Then you slide that guy over to second base, and then you put Nick Allen at shortstop.
Yeah, I mean, a guy like Bo Bichette honestly makes some sense.
Perfect, because he could slide right over
that because he could play shortstop, and you could keep Ozzie Albies, and then you could just play it by feel.
Right.
If you wanted to just take one big swing there, and then hey, we either got shortstop or second base. You're gonna have one positive player there, and Bo Bichette.
And let's also not act like $7 million for a bench bat is going to kill you.
Depth has been a massive problem for this organization.
Yeah, someone's going to get hurt.
But they have to be aggressive in doing this. And I was thinking about it last night, and more to the conversation we were talking about. But, you don't have Ronald Acuna here forever. And I don't know if you're going to be able to re-sign him. So your window is as long as he's wearing a Braves uniform. And that could be 3 years, right? 3 years after the season. So you better be you have all the time to save the money in the world if you're not going to resign him. You literally have forever to save all that money. These 3 seasons that you have Ronald Acuna wearing a Braves uniform, you need to be as aggressive as hell as filling these holes. So that's why I'm so big on they need to attack this offseason like it's do or die, because you're getting to the point. Because if you fail again this season, you're going to start having those legitimate conversations where it's like, do we have to trade Ronald and get a big haul and start saying it? So I think this next year is just so big. Or those conversations about trading Acuna aren't going to be so stupid anymore. They're going to be like the logical thing to do. So that's why I'm very big on them being aggressive. They can't just wait and see with all these guys. They've got to aggressively approach some of these holes. First base, you're good. Catcher is obviously a big one. Do you keep Sean Murphy? Do you keep Drake Baldwin? Do you make one of them the DH? Do you go get a DH? Listen, there's so many ways to do it. Do you go after a Kyle Schwarber? I think it would be hard to poach him away from Philly because they've got deeper pockets, and he obviously has an affection for the city of Philadelphia. He fits in really well there. But do you go out there and outbid him? Do you make it uncomfortable? At least do what you did with Aaron Nola and try to do it. Because listen, Kyle Schwarber can't play defense, but screw defense. I'm tired of that crap. Go. He could play left field. He could DH, and then you have a lot of options and stuff like that. So, and I honestly still don't think it's ridiculous to start trying. Seeing what you have in Drake Baldwin next, if you're going to keep both of them, trying the left field thing like we talked. That's an off-season thing. That's something that we could see in the future, them trying to work that out, because as we get into left field as well, I think, to me, it's crazy to say, and I know I'm kind of going on here, but catcher, DH, and left field are kind of, in a way, all weirdly tied together.
No, I don't think it's weirdly tied together. I think it's all a part of a chain that, you've got to, we don't have all the money in the world. It's as simple as that. If there's anything we've learned over this past year, and I do expect us to spend more money than we did this year, I really do expect that, especially with the resetting of the tax and everything like that, we are going to spend more money, but we will never be able to spend as much money as some of these other teams. We should be closer, but again, we have to be more methodical in where our dollars are allocated. And that's why having a guy like Drake Baldwin, who might not be the most effective designated hitter in the league, but when you're talking about that guy cost you $700,000 and Kyle Schwarber is going to cost you $20 million a year, you can use that $20 million for a starting pitcher or a starting left or, another starting outfielder, or it goes to that massive Bo Bichette contract he's going to garner. That, I am fine with any of the, the fitting of the puzzle pieces. I am fine with Drake Baldwin being a DH. And people get on to me about Sean Murphy's a bad DH. Well, yeah, but if we use that $20 million in the aggregate to make up for what Sean Murphy is as an offensive hitter versus what you would get in addition with that DH, and you make up for it and some in the outfield, then it's all good. Yeah. But that's just a thing.
Yeah, I think the solution is, because I think left field is also a question mark unless Jurickson Profar really shows something over the next month.
You can find somebody who could do both.
Get a slugging left fielder that maybe isn't great defensively, which is kind of why I mentioned Schwarber, but there are plenty others out there that can do both. And like I said, all of this has to just be viewed as Georgia's getting options and depth. And the biggest huge problem with the Braves, and I mentioned earlier, the depth was just atrocious. We came into the season with Kelenic and Brian De La Cruz, and then we had Alex Verdugo and Eli White. Those guys are not major league players. Get a roster. This is the funniest thing about baseball. As much as everyone wants to say, oh, it's random, at the end of the season, you know who usually wins, and you go look They don't have a hole on 26 men. 26 men can all contribute in some, and they all do their job. And it always, at the end of the year, when you look up, you're like, wow, that 26-man roster was the best in the league. It's not really as much as a crapshoot. It's like everyone has a role, everyone can do a role, and everyone has an impact. And the Braves, I don't know what happened, but they decided the depth really didn't matter. And
they just struck out on a number and let certain people go they shouldn't have and kept certain people they shouldn't have.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just a series of bad decisions.
For sure. But the depth thing was still weird. I mean, it's because some of those things, like you could have had better options than Eli White and Alex Verdugo. You just could have. And they didn't. And then you get to center field with Michael Harris, which I think you got to just roll it with Michael Harris. I think that's what they're going to do. But I don't think it's another area where you might have to go get someone that could potentially replace him. And it can't just be Eli White, right? Like, it needs to be a legitimate major leaguer that has experience playing center field. Because if he goes out there and plays like this again, you cannot just be like, oh, well, we got to start him every single day. And it's a lot. That's why we said it's a lot. And you probably can't address all of these things.
No, you can't. So you're going to have to do a combination of some of these things. And you mentioned it. Find a fourth starting outfielder, even if he's bad defensively, it gives you – it's a non-negotiable. Because it gives you so much other flexibility. You could put that guy at DH. You could maybe put Profar in the middle infield, probably second base. Who knows? He's played plenty there, and it's not like it takes a Gold Glove guy to be serviceable at second base. So I think more than anything in terms of position players, number one, and I know it's not I've got to talk people through it, is a starting caliber outfielder.
Yeah. No, I'm
someone
right.
who could start every single day.
I'm right. I think if you're starting anywhere, it's a starting caliber outfielder and it's a middle infielder. You get two of those, you feel a lot more confident about this roster the way it's constructed. But you also got to do stuff with the pitching staff, which we'll get to after the break. Retooling the pitching staff is just important, if not more important, than retooling the entire Braves lineup, which has been one of the worst lineups, surprisingly, in all of baseball since the opening bell. And we'll start with the starting staff because a lot of it is dependent on what you think these guys are, right? And it's difficult because Chris Sale, I think you just got to go into the season thinking he's the ace of the staff and hope that he doesn't get injured. That's the facts. And I think you're right in the same line with Spencer Schwellenbach, who I think has shown you is the second best starter. But after that, it's kind of open season. AJ Smith-Shawver out for the season. Ronaldo Lopez doesn't look like he's coming back. And even if he does come back, I don't think you can make him a starting pitcher. Do you think Grant Holmes is a long-term piece, or do you want to continue to better it? Spencer Strider, do you think he's an ace, or do you think he's a mid-rotation guy? Because maybe then you feel like you need to get another frontline guy. So it really depends on how you view a lot of these pieces. But the overwhelming theme is that there are holes. There's no doubt about that. I think you can pencil in Strider, Schwellenbach, Chris Sale, and then after that, you're just kind of like, I don't know what's left.
I think Grant Holmes is kind of your ace up the sleeve for Alex Anthopoulos. And I think you let the market dictate what Grant Holmes is going to be for 2026. You're able to bring in a couple of starting pitchers, under our budget or in our value, whatever you want to say. Holmes goes to the bullpen. He's got the stuff to be a high leverage reliever. There's no doubt about that. There's plenty of more, and obviously the more likely case is it's easier to upgrade the bullpen. So you starter. I mean, right now he's got, an ERA that is above average. And all you need him to do is, solidify the back end of the rotation. I am still in the back of my mind, because it's not like Grant Holmes throws 93. I mean, Grant Holmes can throw some gas every once in a while. And I'm just a little worried, the stress, the fatigue. He has not had any issues in terms of things that we know about. But these things are almost inevitable, and he's never pitched this much. I am concerned about a similar route as Ronaldo Lopez. So, I think for Anthopoulos, you got to be cautious with him, certainly. But I think, $770,000 or whatever he's getting paid, that's chump change for a starting pitcher. I think.
And the other thing about Holmes is he's the best when you see him first. So that's why he's probably better served as kind of that hybrid reliever that you need, especially when the postseason rolls around and a lot of guys are only going 3, 4, 5 innings, even the best guys. So it's very valuable to have a guy like that. But then obviously he can be a high leverage reliever for you at any point, whether it's the regular season or the postseason, because his slider is literally right up there with Chris Sales as the best slider in all of baseball. And the problem has been his fastball. And obviously you need to have a successful fastball if you're going to have a lot of success as a starter. Now he's been able to make it work, and he's definitely serviceable in the role that he's hit. But yeah, he's probably better suited. So in my opinion, I think the Braves know that. Can he be the fifth starter? Can he be the fourth? Absolutely. And that's definitely something. But I think if you're looking at the roster and you're thinking about October, I think you're thinking about those three that you named, your big three horses, and then you're thinking about filling in two more spots. And then Grant Holmes can be that guy, but he's your sixth guy.
Right. I would say, at minimum, talking about the rotation, is you need one more proven commodity. And I'm not talking about an innings eater. I'm talking about somebody you wouldn't not like, oh, I'm loving it that he's on the mound in the postseason. But if he did toe the rubber in the postseason, you would be like, we got a puncher's chance. And I think when you've got four of those guys, and we know one of them's going down, it doesn't matter who it is. One of them is going down. You need one more guy. And then that fifth guy can be a Griffin Canning. It can be somebody you're just taking a flyer on, eat some innings. Mm-hmm. You've got plenty of young guys knocking on the door of AAA that if that doesn't work out, cycle through, and then maybe,
I agree. And the reason I put Holmes at 6 isn't because I wouldn't like him to be that fourth or fifth guy. I wouldn't mind him there. He's been fine in that role. I just think he could be elite in the bullpen, which we're going to talk about that. So I agree with you. I think you've got to go into the season just expecting one of those top three to go down, because every season they've gone down. And I hate just talking about them like they're just injuries, but it's going to happen.
We can't keep hoping.
Yeah.
Like we're seeing that it doesn't work,
and you got to get a proven guy. I'm right there with you. And then let those guys get here when they're ready and have the same results that we saw with Spencer Schwellenbach and Spencer Strider and other guys that have come through this organization. We're going to wrap up around the horn with the bullpen. A lot of work to be done there as well. The bullpen is a huge question mark, and it'll become an even bigger question mark as we look. This group right now sucks. So let's just call a spade a spade. This was not a good bullpen this season. It was not well constructed, and there needs to be a lot of reinforcements joining it. Now, some of those will come internally. We talk about Joe Jimenez. We talk about Ronaldo Lopez. We talk potentially about Grant Holmes. And if you don't trade away Pierce Johnson, you're kind of just thinking, hey, we need a closer.
That's a solid foundation.
Yeah, we need a closer.
That right there is better than, and you go by a closer, that's better than what we had this year.
Yes, absolutely. And I think you look at that as well, and you probably need one more AJ Minter type guy, a left-handed pitcher that you can trust in high leverage situations. Because as I said with Dylan Lee, and Dylan Lee for the most part has been very good, but he's not your typical shutdown lefty reliever. He's your second lefty. Right. He was our second lefty, and he was great in that role. And you've tried to ask him to be the first lefty, and he's been pretty good, but we've seen him in big moments give up big runs, especially recently. And he's just better suited to be that second lefty. And there's nothing wrong with that. He's been a great second lefty, but you need your AJ Minter type and a closer, which aren't going to be cheap, but it's time to, like we said, you got to be aggressive. You can't go out there and blow. If you don't blow all those games at the beginning of the season with the bullpen, I just think a lot of this kind of spiraled out of control because of every single aspect continued to fail. And you got it. That's an area that you have to patch. It shouldn't be that expensive. AJ Minter cost $11 million. Come on.
I really don't think the bullpen is as dire because of the things that you mentioned. Ronaldo Lopez is never going to be a starter again. Joe Jimenez is coming back. His was a knee, so I don't really even think you have to worry too much about Joe Jimenez. If you have concerns about Lopez because it's his shoulder, I understand. But he's been shut down for damn near the whole year. I'm hoping that was enough. And then you mentioned it. You don't trade away Pierce Johnson. He's been really, really good for you. You get a guy back there like Grant Holmes who can be, kind of your hybrid ace up the sleeve. Like I'm saying, he can kind of fill whatever you need to fill. So he's kind of like just gel him to whatever you need him. And then at the end of the day, like you said, just in my opinion, because you still got Dylan Lee, you've got Dalsbel Hernandez, you need a closer. I do agree you need a setup man from the left side, absolutely. But that's one thing that you can maybe patchwork, hopefully if the rest of the team comes together like we all hope, that's something that you can certainly pick up at the trade deadline next year. But I think simply put, you're going to need at least $60 million to spend between a starting caliber outfielder or infielder. This is per season, closer, and then a starting pitcher, at least. And then that doesn't even include the margins.
Yeah, no, I think this is this is just off the top of my head. I legitimately think it's around $100 million fix. Like, I think it's a $90 to $100 million fix to fix everything. And listen, I think payroll after they exercise Chris Sales will be at $175 million. Like, they're going to have to get, I think, into like the 250s. And if they're not willing to do it, you're not going to be very happy, I believe, with the product. But that's just what it's going to take if you want to win a World Series. And I think there's a lot more lucrative, that venue, things that can happen for this organization. If they spend the money, they're going to make it back. I guarantee it, but they're going to need to spend the money. Another guy we didn't even mention, though, sticking to the bullpen, though, Hayden Harris could be that lefty guy. Like that's a guy that I expect to see up here very, very soon. And John Carlos Lara, I definitely expect to see him up. If not, this season, why not? I might as well see it.
What's
the point? We're going to keep losing games. But I think once we deal away some of these relievers, I think they come up. See what you have in those guys, because that could make you feel even more confident about the future of this bullpen. If one of those guys can be another high leverage guy, then boom, you don't even need to go get it, and then just go get yourself a proven closer and call it a day on that end. So that would be that's definitely something when we talk about things worth watching the rest of the year. Seeing if one of those relievers can be a big piece to this bullpen would be a huge development and make it a lot easier to not spend $260 million.
That's one of the reasons why I think trading Pierce Johnson is not really in the Braves' best interest. You think you're going to go get somebody as effective for $7 million? I mean, you probably could, but like, why even just, add one more thing to the to-do list? You might as well. There's a lot to do. And I said, on Twitter, am I crazy to think we don't need major changes? And I honestly don't think we need major changes in terms of, that's what I don't consider major. It's major money, but in terms of like the core is still the core. All we need to do, and I seriously think it takes 3 to 4 guys. And like you said, I think 60-ish million, 75-ish million dollars between these 3 or 4 guys. Closer, starting pitcher, and a middle infielder, a starting middle infielder, and a starting outfielder. And I think you would see a world of a difference. I really, really do.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah,
I guess that's major.
I
don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot.
It's a major number.
I think the number. I really think the Braves are going to have to be sniffing $250 million on their payroll next year, which gives them about $80 million if they're going to pick up Chris Sale's option, which is 18. I think you're right. They should definitely pick up Pierce Johnson's, which is 7. And then you're getting into $60 to $70 million worth of additions. And if you're willing to get into that range, which they've been close to it in the past, and they saved a bunch of money this year.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. And we made more with the All-Star game and reset the luxury tax.
Luxury tax is reset. So I don't see any reason why they can't get to 250. And I think there should be, as I said, a sense of urgency, knowing that Ronald Acuna is not going to be here forever. And we don't want to have these conversations next year where we're talking about really selling off some of these pieces that we thought were going to be here forever. ACC Media Days recently took place, and it was a refreshing aspect of the Bill Belichick era that is just beginning in North Carolina, because we didn't hear much about his girlfriend. It was actually about football, which is, I think, what most people expected when they hired the best coach in the history of the NFL to take over their program. But the win total for the North Carolina Tar Heels in Belichick's first season is 7.5. Do you see them going over or under in Belichick's first year?
If you look at and I don't know their roster, like I know some in the SEC or even the Big Ten, I know much better, and even Clemson. I just don't really pay attention to UNC. It's not football there. It's,
not basketball either.
What's his girlfriend doing? And it's a shame, because I'm sure the boosters are not happy with this. It couldn't have started worse. It literally could not have started in a worse way. From a football standpoint. Now, attention, you got it all. But I just think you look at their schedule. TCU's the out of conference. The only real playoff contender in the ACC that they have to face is Clemson. We're going to chalk that up, obviously, as a loss. But I mean, all the other games are very winnable. And 8-4 is not crazy, but that 7.5 win total makes me think that it's going to be, there's going to be some growing pains. 6-6, 5-7. There might be a little grace period needed, because he is going from, this is your job, do your job, the famous quote, do your job, to kids who are like, they have school and we know it's now athletes, students. It's not student athletes anymore. At UNC, they still care. They still care. So I think there's going to be, some growing pains. I'm going to go under.
Well, I mean, UNC, if people remember, had one of the most atrocious defenses you'll ever see. I mean, I remember James Madison scoring like 70 against them.
James Madison's offense was nasty.
But listen, obviously, anytime you're taking over a new program, it's hard. I mean, kids are transferring left and right, and Bill Belichick did have the ability to go out there and get some guys and stuff like that, but it's never easy. I mean, you're putting a lot of new pieces together. It's a new program. It's a new system. It's a new level of ball for Bill Belichick. So I understand why it could be ugly. I mean, it legitimately could be just atrocious looking, and they could go and win 4 or 5 games. And I don't think anybody would be surprised if they're at the bottom of the barrel in the ACC. But I don't know. I'm choosing to trust Bill Belichick, and I just the track record. Like I'm choosing that. Yes, as you said, there's a lot of winnable games there. Like he's not going to be completely dominated, out-talented in most of those games. So I think a lot of it's going to come into people buying in. And I think most of the people that went to UNC to play under Bill Belichick, probably pretty easy to convince to buy in, because he's kind of you get a chance. It's not like the NFL where you don't get a choice. Like you get a choice. So you're either kind of a guy that wants to get coached by a guy like Bill Belichick. You know exactly what you're signing up for, or you're not.
Do they?
Well, maybe not. I think most of them do.
I think that like on the surface, it's like, yeah, I'd love to be coached by the hardest coach in the NFL. Like I remember Aaron Rodgers saying something like that when, years ago when it was the Rodgers-Brady debate before Brady went and won the latter half of all of his Super Bowls. And he goes, I'd love to be coached by a guy like, Bill Belichick. He's so smart. He's so hard on you. He's so meticulous. And like, would you though, Aaron Rodgers? Like, I don't really think you'd vibe with him all that well. And like the same goes for these kids where it's like, you think you know what hard is? I don't think you do. And I don't either, but I'm just saying, like, there might be a reality check for everybody.
I don't think that's out of the realm of possibilities. And that's why you get a number like that.
How often does a 18-year-old kid go, I know, like, Bill Belichick is going to demand so much from a responsibility standpoint. Nobody at 18 years, very few kids know what real responsibility is. I just find it hard to believe that these kids, it's going to be like that.
Let's also remember Bill Belichick has a pretty good guy to lean on in his buddy Nick Saban, who was able to get through to college students like nobody's been able to get through college students. Listen, I don't think he came in here not knowing what he was getting into and how different it was going to be. So I don't know. I'm choosing to believe in Bill Belichick. And maybe it's part of me of wanting it. I want another Deion-like story.
Well, they're betting on it. He's going to be on more ESPN games than any other ACC school.
And I want that. Like, I want it. Like, I will be watching, just like I watch Colorado football, like, I will be tuning in to see hoodied up in Carolina blue Bill Belichick coaching 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids. Like, their jobs are on the line. Yes, sign me the hell up. I want to see that. And I don't want it to be a situation where we watch another, and you see it time and time again, where you see a legend go out so badly. I mean, you see it in the UFC all the time, and it hurts a little worse because they're going to get knocked the hell out. But it's like the guy that you've loved, you've seen him beat some ass like nobody's business, and then you just see like, damn, you're a little old, bud.
Yeah, he's getting like, who's the coach of Wake Forest right now?
Yeah, you don't want to see Bill Belichick.
Bill Belichick's getting out coached by some 35-year-old at Wake Forest. I don't mean to disrespect Wake Forest, but like,
I don't want to see Belichick go out like that. I just don't. He's a legend of the sport, and I hope it. And it would add another, kind of cool thing to the ACC. I mean, they are a pretty boring conference. Yeah. Like, let's get UNC in the mix. That would be fun. We got one more segment coming after the break. A week left before the trade deadline. Alex, when we come back here on Monday, will there be a trade by the Atlanta Braves done?
Excuse me. Yes, we will say goodbye to the Big Bear. And it'll be a sad one for me. I love that guy. I love that fat guy. I'm going to miss him a lot. I just think The only reason he's going to go first is because he's going to be a lesser commodity than I think the Braves are actually going to be able to get a decent little haul for their relievers. I really do, just because it's a seller's market.
Yeah, I don't know about Bummer, but just getting
Maybe
him
not
off
Bummer,
the books.
but-
But if they wanted to trade Pierce Johnson, and I agree with you on Rossell Iglesias, because outside of that one outing, he's been very, very good. And I think there will be a little bit of a bidding war, especially when guys like Duran, if they don't come off the market. I agree. I think the Big Bear gets traded this weekend, and we don't get to see him again at Truist Park until he's in another uniform. That wraps up our show for today. Thank you guys for joining us. We'll be back with you on Monday.